Welcome to Recurring Insight. It's the beginning of your upkeep, so it's time for another episode. I'm your host, Michael, and let's dive in. Today, we'll be going over the Underworld Breach combo. The card took the format by storm when it was released due to its recursion and combo potential. The combo is made up of three parts: Underworld Breach, a mill source that fills the graveyard enough that the mana source can be recast, and a mana source that fuels the casting of itself and the mill source. In this episode, we'll look at which sources work together, ways to assemble them, and what you should consider when deciding whether or not to run the combos. Brain Freeze has little use outside of the combo besides blanking top of deck tutors. Like the others, it works with LED and Lotus Petal, and that's the line we'll look at. Starting with everything in your hand, pay 2 to cast Breach, cast Lotus Petal for 0, then crack it for a blue. Use that mana to cast Brain Freeze. The storm count should be at least 2, so you mill 9 cards. You now have enough cards in your graveyard to cast and crack Lotus Petal twice to pay for Brain Freeze with a storm count of 5, milling 18 cards. You can then repeat this until you can assemble another combo, or just mill your opponents with Brain Freeze. Wheel of Fortune and Windfall can be used with LED or Smothering Tithe, assuming someone has at least 6 cards in their hands. It works like the Brain Freeze combo, but worse, as you can't fill up your graveyard as quickly. With Smothering Tithe though, as you don't need to recast your mana source, you mill an additional 4 cards each iteration. However, you do fill your opponent's hands and are at risk of milling yourself out. Due to this, Silence Effects and Angel's Grace often make an appearance. However, Angel's Grace is often a dead card, so unless you're running Ad Nauseam or your main win con relies on it, I would counsel against including it. The combo can be run without any other color using Grinding Station and LED or any mana neutral rock. For this example, I'll use Mana Crypt. Start by paying 2 for Underworld Breach, then another 2 for Grinding Station. Cast Mana Crypt, tap it for mana, and sack it to Grinding Station, milling 3. These 3 cards can then be exiled to recast Mana Crypt, untapping Grinding Station so the loop can be repeated. This is one of the weaker combos. Stitcher's Supplier can be used with Culling the Weak or any other sacrifice ritual. However, Culling the Weak is the best as the other sacrifice rituals typically are dependent on CMC. Start by paying 2 for Breach, then 1 for Stitcher's Supplier, which mills 3. Then cast Culling the Weak, sacrificing Stitcher's Supplier, milling another 3. Although this doesn't fill up your graveyard, it does produce large amounts of black mana and lets you sift through your deck. Now that we've got the combos ironed out, let's look at how they're typically assembled. Although they can be assembled manually, both Spellseeker and Intuition can be used to assemble them. Honestly, any tutor to your hand can assemble it if you have enough mana and cards in your graveyard, as you can keep reusing the tutors. Let's start with the Spellseeker line. Begin by casting Spellseeker for 3, finding Ephemerate. Cast Ephemerate targeting Spellseeker. This will flicker her, finding Final Fortune. Cast Final Fortune, getting an extra turn. Go to your extra turn, and at the beginning of your upkeep, Ephemerate is cast again due to having Rebound. This flickers Spellseeker, finding Enlightened Tutor. Cast Enlightened Tutor, putting Underworld Breach on top of your library. Draw it for turn, then cast it. Cast Ephemerate from your graveyard, flickering Spellseeker to find Brain Freeze. Cast Enlightened Tutor from your graveyard, putting Lion's Eye Diamond or Lotus Petal on top of your library. Then cast Brain Freeze, milling 18 cards. From here, you can continue the combo. Intuition is the more popular card, as you don't require as many dead cards as the Spellseeker line. Cast Intuition, finding Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Savine's Reclamation. Due to the number of possibilities, I'm not going to goldfish this. I will, however, break down the decision trees. If you're given Savine's Reclamation, you can either recur LED or Breach. If you recur Savine's Reclamation, you have 2 main options, depending on how many cards you have in your graveyard. You'll either pay 6 and a white, 7, 2 blue and a white, or 8 and 2 white. However, if you have 11 cards in your graveyard, you can afford to cast LED a 3rd time to bring it down to just 4 and a white. If you recur Breach, you'll either pay 2 and a white or 4 and a white. It's cheaper, but you do require more cards in your graveyard. You can avoid cracking LED, in which case it's cheaper to recur Breach than LED, but you'll still be looking at 5, 2 blue, and a white. If you're given Underworld Breach, you have access to one of the cheapest lines at just 1 and a red, but you do need 11 cards in your graveyard. At 8 cards, you're at 3 and a red, and you can avoid casting LED if you're willing to pay 4, 2 blue, and a red. LED yields the other cheapest line at 2 generic mana, and you need 8 cards in your graveyard versus the 11 with the 1 and a red Breach line. It also is the cheapest line if you have 5 cards in your graveyard at just 4 generic mana. Like with the other lines, you can avoid cracking LED, it's just going to cost 7, 2 blue, and white. As a general overview, having less than 8 cards in your graveyard or not cracking LED drastically increases the cost of the lines. Keep in mind though, that if you do crack LED, you'll be discarding your hand, so you'll be able to hit the 8 and 11 card thresholds pretty easily, even though you will be giving up the interaction in your hand. With this, you can determine whether or not you can afford to combo off. Also, if you're playing against this, you can determine which line you should give your opponent. There are other combos that can be used with Breach, like Liquidus with rituals that net 3 or more mana, Burning Inquiry and a mana source that doesn't need to be recast, but for the most part, they aren't good enough to make it into cEDH. Underworld Breach is a good recursion piece outside of a combo, so it may see play even if you don't run it. However, because the package does include dead cards like Brain Freeze and LED, it's at its best in proactive and mid-range decks. If you're going far into the disruptive category, it can dilute your card quality enough that it's not worth it. It's at its best when the deck runs Jeskai colors, as you have access to both the Spellseeker and Intuition lines. If you're in 4 colors, you really shouldn't be running it unless you have the Jeskai colors or are incredibly proactive. You have access to better combos that are easier to assemble. If you're in red and black but don't have blue, you're most likely proactive enough that you can afford the Stitcher Supplier and Grinding Station lines. However, if you're lacking blue and black, although you can make it work, I would advise against it, as you'll have difficulty assembling it and you'll have to resort to using subpar pieces. There we go, thanks so much for watching, I hope this video was helpful. I tend to prefer decks with red and blue, so Underworld Breach sees a lot of play in my own personal decks. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you at the beginning of the next upkeep for another episode of Recurring Insight.